Welcome to the Personal Computer Show. Today is February the 19th, 2020. A shout out to the men and women serving in the military of our country. We thank them for their services. I'm Hank Key and my colleague is Joe King. Do you know who has your personal data? Do you know how Facebook, Google, Amazon, and other big tech companies are using your personal data? Our website is pcradioshow.org. We are heard each Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on prn.fm, streaming on the Internet. Podcasts of the programs available on prn.fm, on the Internet, as well as pcradioshow.org. To listen to the live program on the telephone each Wednesday at 6 p.m., the number is 641-793-7091. You can leave us a message with your question or comment at hank@pcradioshow.org. It appears the United States has a smoking gun confirming Huawei-Built spy backdoors. According to the Wall Street Journal report, the U.S. government officials are claiming Huawei, a phone and telecommunications company with ties to the Chinese government, has the ability to spy on users of mobile phone networks employing Huawei equipment. The claim comes after years of accusation from the U.S. government and repeated denials from Huawei. While Huawei is one of the largest sellers of phones in the world, its original business was building telecommunication networks. However, the United States have been wary of allowing Huawei equipment to be incorporated into U.S. telecommunication networks. A 2012 congressional report effectively banned Huawei from selling the equipment and strongly discouraged U.S. phone companies from selling Huawei phones in their stores. The U.S. wariness comes from concerns regarding Huawei ties to the Chinese government. Its founder is former Chinese military and good old-fashioned protectionism. The company has been well-positioned and provided equipment for the rollout of affordable and fast 5G networks. Last year, the United States and Huawei traded barbs over the United States concerns and Huawei's alleged spying, fraud, and violation of international sanctions against Iran. The furor led to both Australia and New Zealand banning the use of Huawei equipment in telecommunication networks. However, some of the largest telecommunication networks in the world, including ones owned by the UK-based Vodafone and the German Deutsche Telekom AG, currently incorporate Huawei equipment. U.S. officials now claim Huawei has included backdoors into the equipment that effectively allows it to access the same data law enforcement can access. Typically, these backdoors, known as lawful interception interfaces, are used exclusively by law enforcement who must provide warrants to gain access. The equivalent of the old-school wiretap, these lawful intercept interfaces gives the user of the interface access to any data transmitted over the network, including phone calls and text messages. Naturally, equipment providers aren't supposed to have access and are supposed to build the equipment in such a way that they can't gain access down the line. But the U.S. accuses Huawei of doing just that. According to the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. took its latest proof to closed-door meetings with officials and telco companies in the UK and Germany. A confidential memo written by the German Foreign Office and acquired by the Wall Street Journal characterizes the proof presented in the meeting as a smoking gun. However, politically, these companies and officials are a little more reticent. Vodafone denied any equipment maker could access its network in that manner, while Deutsche Telekom AG told the Wall Street Journal a German company had developed its lawful interception interface and thus Huawei couldn't access it. But it isn't necessarily up to the corporations who want to continue to use well-designed and super cheap equipment built by Huawei. The German legislature is planning to vote on a bill in the coming weeks that could give Huawei the ability to provide equipment for Germany's new 5G networks. The bill has become a point of contention between Germany and China with China threatening consequences if it isn't passed. The revelation of the U.S. still unseen smoking gun certainly has interesting timing. We need to find out more. We really do. Fortnite is a survival game where 100 players fight against each other in player versus player combat to be the last one standing. It is a fast-paced, action-packed game, not unlike the Hunger Games, where strategic thinking is a must in order to survive. There are an estimated 125 million players on Fortnite. Why is Fortnite so popular? Well, it's free, available on a huge range of devices: PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, PC, the Mac, iOS, and some Android devices. The gameplay is simple but extremely immersive. Multiplayer games last up to 30 minutes and players can quickly re-enter a new game, making long sessions extremely easy. It is attractively designed, and with weekly updates and challenges, it's constantly evolving. In-game currency, virtual bucks or virtual dollars, allow players to complete challenges for rewards. It's culturally huge with a massive social media following, so children might feel left out if they don't play. Fortnite is free to play, but by buying a season's battle pass costing less than $10 and lasting a full battle royal season around 3 months, you can receive bonus rewards. The option of buying in-game add-ons can be done with virtual bucks. Fortnite's in-game currency. You can purchase virtual bucks for cash or earn more virtual bucks by buying a season battle pass, which again costs money. All items that can be bought with virtual bucks are simply aesthetic, and it does not impact on gameplay. As with all games that offer in-app purchases, it's important to make sure that children do not have access to their parents' credit card details. It is also important to discuss with children how in-game purchases are designed to entice them in and spend money. However, if they are still adamant that they wish to purchase items on the game, allowing them to do so with their own pocket money can be a great way of giving a child a greater sense of independence. The game's creator, Epic, recently had to issue a statement advising how users can protect their accounts. This included third-party sites falsely advertising free virtual bucks or V-Bucks in exchange for personal information. They also included a list of security tips and advice. So, with this game, why do I bring it up? Well, the IRS is quietly deleting guidelines that Fortnite virtual currency must report it on tax returns. Are you kidding? For months leading up to the tax season, a section of the IRS website advised players of Fortnite, the popular online video game, that their use of in-game virtual currency could be subject to federal taxes. The little notice provision, which dated back at least to October, according to the IRS webpage, appeared to mark the first time the agency has ruled on video game currencies, including Fortnite's V-Bucks, purchased with real dollars. By applying the same policy to in-game money that it enforces on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, the IRS guides seem poised to affect millions of gamers or their parents. But last week, the IRS scrubbed all mention of the in-game currency from the webpage after questions from CNN and other outlets about the policy. Despite the sudden deletion, experts believe that transactions involving video game currencies will still need to be reported under a new question the IRS is including this year on tax forms. But because the IRS deleted the language, they said, does not resolve questions about how the IRS planned to treat video game currencies. The day after the agency deleted the guidelines, IRS Chief Counsel told reporters at a Washington conference that including the video game currencies had been a mistake. It was corrected, and that was done quickly. However, the IRS did not respond when CNN asked for a statement clarifying the tax treatment of video game currencies. The IRS changes only add to confusion about how it is handling tax filings for virtual currencies, and the definition of virtual currency in IRS guidance would still encompass these. The agency had long reminded Americans that virtual currency is treated like property for tax purposes. When Americans buy Bitcoin, for example, they need to keep track of how much they paid for it when they sell it. They need to report any appreciation in value and pay taxes on those capital gains, and can claim a loss if there were realized losses. Using Bitcoin to buy goods and services, even a cup of coffee, is still considered a sale of property and potentially a taxable event. The IRS published a landmark policy guidance back in 2014 laying out the details, and another update last year. Last fall, the IRS appeared to clarify that the same tax policy also applies to video game currencies. Bitcoin and V-Bucks are a few examples of a convertible virtual currency. The IRS did not appear to limit the type of video game currencies that may be covered under the policy. Fortnite in particular has become an internet sensation, amassing $1.8 billion in revenue last year, according to industry estimates. Last March, Fortnite publisher Epic Games announced the title had nearly 250 million registered players around the globe. Following the IRS surgical edits this week, Bitcoin is the only remaining example of a virtual currency offered on the agency webpage. But just because V-Bucks have been removed does not mean the IRS regard all transactions in the currency as tax exempt. They probably removed it because it's not particularly accurate or had some error. In the law, if it's not specifically exempted, then it's taxable. Nothing is exempt from taxation which is not excluded from the law. Taxpayers who had virtual currency transactions in 2019 will need to fill out Schedule I with their Form 1040 according to IRS 1040 instructions. The first question on Schedule I: at any time during 2019, did you receive, sell, exchange, or otherwise acquire any financial interest in any virtual currency? Boy, I would like to see kids filling this form out. According to the instructions for Schedule I, taxpayers will need to answer yes if they have engaged in a transaction involving virtual currency, if they have received any amount of virtual currency for free, have exchanged virtual currency for goods or services, have sold virtual currency, or have exchanged virtual currency for other property, including other virtual currency. The reversal came the same day that the Government Accounting Office published a report calling on the IRS to provide clarification on virtual currencies. Some tax experts said the agency is simply struggling to apply time-honored tax principles to novel technologies. Just because you may need to answer yes to the question on Schedule I does not necessarily mean you need to fill out anything else. It depends on your personal situation and who should be responsible for it. The onus is still on the taxpayer to figure out whether they owe the IRS and to fill out an accurate tax return, at least for now. TVS Television Network launches a free streaming service with offerings of classic TV programs. The TVS Television Network, the fourth oldest commercial TV network founded in 1960, has announced the launch of 12 free streaming channels available currently on www.watchyour.tv. That's www.watchyour, that's one word, .tv. The TVS Television Network has produced and syndicated many news, sports, and entertainment television programs to the national TV audience. The new streaming video service will have classic TV programs and movies 24 hours a day. While all of the classic programming is of a vintage nature, TVS plans an aggressive slate of new programs that capture the historic nature of television. TVS plans to bring in 500 new shows per year. This video streaming channel will be fully supported by advertisements and will feature top classic TV shows from the past 60 years of television, including, at least these are programs that I recognize, Bonanza, Andy Griffith, Robin Hood, Jim Bowie, Petticoat Junction, Green Acres, Dobie Gillis, My Favorite Martian, Sea Hunt, Peter Gunn, Checkmate, Beverly Hillbillies, Ozzie and Harriet, Dick Van Dyke, and many other classics. We'll likely continue to see ad-supported services like this coming from traditional TV stations as companies work to reach a wider audience and cash in on cord cutting. So it's WatchYour.tv is available on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Android devices, Apple TV, and iOS devices, and on the web. Enjoy yourself. What we know and not know about the coronavirus. In the last week or so, new cases of the 2019 nCoV coronavirus have soared. Cases outside China have proliferated. So have news articles appear on the internet that are not based on actual facts. If one thing has spread faster than the new coronavirus from Wuhan, China, it is worldwide fear of the bug. The coronavirus may be no more dangerous than the flu despite worldwide alarm. The Wuhan coronavirus is very unlikely to kill you personally. It might not kill many people at all in the United States. Panic isn't good, and we're apt to act more sensibly with a clear head. Yes, we shouldn't panic, but let's not dismiss people's worries so easily. There's still much that we don't know about the virus. Misinformation has spread rapidly on the internet, partially as a result of a panicked and uninformed public that wants to read about the virus and is looking for someone to blame. One paper wrongly claimed that telltale signs in the genome of the 2019 nCoV proved that it had been engineered from HIV. Biologists quickly refuted this, pointing out that the supposed similarities are present in lots of viruses, but the false claim had already gained widespread attention. There is much information you can find on the internet, but at the same time there's much misinformation. It seems whenever there's a major incident, conspiracy theories make their circulation. There is a conspiracy theory circulating that the virus escaped from a Wuhan research lab. That's not true. And there's a different conspiracy theory that it was engineered by Bill Gates, who funds a research group that has done pandemic control exercises about a hypothetical deadly coronavirus. That's also not true, and I know Bill Gates, and that's not him. Internet trolls have spread false claims that drinking bleach protects against coronavirus. Hey, don't do this, please. Don't drink the stuff. To say that there's no reason for alarm is bad science as well as bad risk communication. This is a major public health emergency that's being tackled like one. A great deal of effort and plenty of resources have gone into the effort to contain it. With so few cases and no deaths in the United States, it's admittedly absurd by Americans to be paranoid when they hear someone cough nearby. We should not be panicking or be hysterical. Damaging lies have spread about Asian businesses. No, you can't get the coronavirus from Chinese food. Obviously, there should be extensive efforts to tamp down on virus panic when it takes the form of vicious racism. The virus isn't that dangerous to us. Panic about it is, causing avoidable social problems, and we should all calm down. What we do know at this time is we still don't know how bad the coronavirus is. We won't know the magnitude of the threat until lots of people have put lots of effort into containment. Initially, treating the coronavirus as though it has the potential to be the next 1918 influenza was, from a public health perspective, absolutely the right call. Let's keep our cool. Presenting Benjamin Rockwell with Q&A about the life and death of businesses.
This is Benjamin Rockwell, and yes, this is where I'm going to talk about business. I'm going to talk about business and IT. And this is where my 30 years of experience comes into play here. I tell you about my current and past experience, and I put it all together to answer questions sometimes. In this case, I've got a question that came on in, and you can reach me here through the show, and I will answer your computer questions. I love doing this. In this particular case, it's asked, this is a long set of questions. What are special information technology considerations for workplaces that involve life safety issues, which can develop quickly and are unforgiving of errors? For example, do aviation, nuclear power, and hospital IT departments need to adhere to a different set of standards than other businesses? If so, to what degree do IT costs increase? How does one determine if third-party vendors are to meet such increased safety and reliability standards? How does one determine if potential new employees can meet such standards? All right, so that's a big, huge mouthful, a bunch of different questions all thrown at once. And yes, this is an area where we need to be aware of IT and its impact on life-threatening situations, life safety situations. And this is something that some companies, some organizations, whether we're talking, yes, again, aviation, nuclear power, but hospital IT departments, they plan ahead and they do expend extra energy into IT. There was a study done a while back that said that IT in hospitals which paid more for their IT department, they had a higher budget, they had a higher percentage of budget go to the information technology department, that those hospitals actually wound up with a better mortality rate. In other words, more people were living, more people survived, because not necessarily because they spent more on IT, but because they were spending more in areas where they were not cost cutting. Okay, so in a way, yes, we're spending more money in a situation where it's not directly affecting the lives. Okay, we're spending more money on IT. How is that going to affect the mortality of somebody who's having open heart surgery? Well, it's not, except for the fact that if they're spending more money on IT, they're also spending more money on the doctor who's cutting into your chest. They're spending more money on the nurses. They're spending more money on taking care of you. Follow me there? So these different departments and different groups, whatever it is, organizations, they frequently do adhere to a higher level, but frequently that higher level is set by themselves. And that higher level is set frequently by how they treat IT. Now, in some areas, yes, there are certain governmental standards, certain things like HIPAA. You may have heard of HIPAA, and it's the Healthcare Information Professional Patient Act or something like that. And it's all about securing your data, making sure that these hospitals don't say, hey, we're going to sell off all of the data. Hey, we had this many heart surgeons or surgeries, and, this is all of the people. They control all of that. And it's more about the individuals than the greater statistical information. And yes, whenever we're talking about governmental oversight, your costs are going to increase. Your costs are going to definitely go up. To what extent do they go up? It all depends on which industry. It also depends on to what level of compliance that a company is going to willingly go through. All right. So we talked about aviation at one point. So aviation is required to adhere to something called ITAR, the International Trafficking in Arms Regulations. All that really stands for is, there's another version called EAR, Export Administration Regulations, and it just talks about who can access the information that's involved with developing a 747, or more specifically, an F-16. Or, an A-10, one of these different aircrafts that are military-level aircrafts. So So they have all of these different paperwork regulations that they have to go through and they have to follow, because not only do we need to make sure that nobody I'll just pick a country at random, let's say somebody innocuous like North Korea. We don't want North Korea finding out about how we make our fighter aircraft. I think most people would agree with that. So we need to make sure that we don't have North Koreans wandering onto a military subcontractor's location and finding out how we make the wings, how we make the different items that go onto these fighter airplanes. But we also need to make sure that we're not allowing them to come in electronically, making sure they're not hacking into our systems, that we're not giving out that information. And sometimes companies get into trouble because they did release information. Boeing a few years ago was hit, initially over the course of three different incidents. Initially, they were hit by something small. It was like a $500,000 fine. And then they were hit by a $20 million fine, then a $200 million fine because their information got out. And that cost them a lot. And this is just an extension on that. So how do you determine if third-party vendors are to meet those things? Well, it's generally something that you ask a lot of questions. You interrogate those different groups, those different subcontractors, and you say, hey, are you doing this? Are you doing that? Unfortunately, sometimes you're allowed to send an auditor, and sometimes it just isn't going to work out as well. How do you know if new employees will meet those standards of whatever things you need? Unfortunately, that's all part of HR. That's not really an IT thing. I'm sorry. This is Benjamin Rockwell. I hope you've got at least a little bit of an insight into this. Back to you, Hank.
Thank you, Benjamin. What do you do when the Windows operating system gets sluggish? Windows rot is a name someone gave the process by which a Windows machine becomes progressively slower the longer you use it and the more software you install on it. The problem is known internally to Microsoft as Windows rot. Some have blamed it on third-party apps. An example of this is when you install an app which does not meet with your expectations, you then proceed to uninstall it. Some apps resist uninstallation. You also have apps that knowingly do only partial uninstallation. To say that some apps do not do a good job of uninstalling is, well, being gracious about it. I find that many deliberately leave behind audit trails to enable them to still track as well as to promote reinstallation of the app. Most apps, when uninstalled, leaves behind the application subdirectory in Program Files or Program Files x86. Some apps go further by not removing all references in the registry. Some people try to uninstall apps by deleting the folder, which leaves zombie DLL, which are dynamic link loaders, references in the registry and elsewhere. All of these contribute to the degradation of performance over time. Many programs do not properly exit when you choose to close the program. Many apps, when closed, don't really close or clean up the working areas, such as temporary files. You also have programs not exiting out and removing itself from memory. They just hang on to the memory space, which reduces available memory, resulting in a greater demand for virtual paging. Why do these apps misbehave? The reasons are, well, they're marketing reasons for it. The next time the app runs in the same session, see how fast it loads. Instead of restarting the system or shutting down the system and starting over, I just log off and log back on again, which frees up the available resources. A logged off computer is running, but no user account is accessing it, and the only programs running on the computer are system services. In the log off state, a computer can still receive patches and updates, and the patch management software can reboot the PC as needed without any risk of deleting users' data. But that's an interruption then. That brings up another area why a system will slow down. That is when the operating system is set to automatically receive and run updates. Setting it to download and run later will still slow down the system. Let's look at this another way. The user and the software they run. So you have some third-party utilities, drivers, and Likely common things like anti-malware software. These can be factors after loading the programs you're going to run and use all the time, and this is common with some anti-malware software. Some common software like Flash and other things might have running applications even when you're not running the main application. Many of these operations are not necessary. On older hardware, they can be more disruptive to the CPU than on newer hardware. But also older hardware might struggle more with newer versions of current software, like third-party browsers. I have personally come across software like games which installed copy protection rootkits. They behave just like malware, use the same techniques as malware, and have even caused severe system instability, crashing, blue screen of death when they conflicted with the hardware or drivers. This is and was a real problem. Just by installing a game that you bought, or even if it's a demo, its copy protection malware rootkit can make your system not work properly. Another point to bring up is the Sony Audio CD rootkit for those who left their autoplay enabled. It would install without user permission, but it took Microsoft years to give the average user control to turn it off without Power Tools registry tweaks. Next, defragmentation isn't really an issue anymore unless the scheduled tasks to defrag your disk have been turned off. However, it is known that defragmentation of files on solid-state drives can lead to their early death due to their nature. Some of the registry cleaners are constantly updating their program and boasting of how many more registry errors they clean up. Don't believe all that crap about the registry cleaning. The registry cleaners can be snake oil for the most part and really make any real improvement. They can also cause problems with false positives to the extent of making the operating system and programs crash by deleting and or changing things they're not supposed to. I've never seen indexing cause any severe slowdowns at all. The only time I've encountered problems with temporary files is when people run out of space and ever so rare limit how many files can be in a directory after it's been cleaned in a long time. The performance of the operating system will degrade over time as users are given permission to tweak what apps they are running, and the tweaks, the options, the premature shutdown of an app, such as just turning off the system without closing it. The operating system can be brought back to snuff by refreshing the operating system. I only reinstall when I have to, and my current install of Windows is, well, it's been some while now. I don't load my system with crap, or at least I try not to. I used to run a batch file to clean my temporary folders. However, if I remember, I'll run the disk cleanup maybe once in a while. I leave the weekly schedule enabled, but edit it to monthly. Oh, just remind everyone, I do backup every day. I build my own computers, but those with packaged systems definitely might come across some crap running that doesn't need to be. You need to decrapify it from your system. I've also seen new drivers conflict with older software to bring up an older program. A somewhat popular third-party software firewall had issues with newer network drivers. This software is no longer supported, yet it ran on a currently supported operating system, and the companies who wrote these drivers didn't make any real attempt to fix the problem. I've also seen where graphics processing unit acceleration in software caused other running software to crash, as its interaction corrupted the memory on the video card. For example, you had to disable the GPU acceleration in Flash to prevent the problem from happening. I've seen the GPU acceleration even cause the hardware to lock up with the most recent video drivers. Additional software, hardware, device drivers, and settings can all contribute to your computer deciding that it has better things to do than what you specifically asked it to do. There are several mechanisms for this. Installing new software will add to this in several ways. The most annoying way it does is by adding quick starters. These little programs that sit in your system tray and keep the resources for that program ready and waiting for you to decide when you want to run it. This means that those resources, which is memory, aren't available for other programs that want to load and run. If you have a bunch of these, they will force a new program to push them off into other parts of memory in order to make space for themselves when they're trying to run. Things that run on startup are in general a major culprit here. When you install stuff, it can force run on startup in several ways. Stuff that gets put into startup are the easiest and most obvious. Services are even more annoying because you can't actually remove them, then you can only disable them. These are bunches of little programs whose running is controlled by the operating system. Auto updaters, helpers, databases, firewalls, virus monitors, and several other types of programs sit in an area controlled by your operating system. Sometimes they only start when you need them. Other times they run at boot up and stay running whether you need them or not. Especially heinous are the ones that wind up in the registry. This isn't readily known, is hard to spot, and hard to monitor. There are tools that regularly monitor the stuff that gets into your registry, but then you have another program running in the background. Another issue is the Windows registry. This thing was designed to get larger and larger without ever bothering to clean it up. Nodes are deactivated instead of being deleted, and everything that installs leaves their mark for all eternity. Every installer puts information into it. Your operating system is entirely dependent upon it in order to continue functioning, and most larger programs will store information there. The inevitable increase in the size of this does result in slowdowns for registry lookups, which in turn slows down software loading and web page loading. This isn't including hardware problems. If your hard drive is going bad, you'll spend a lot of time waiting for stuff to load. Excessive heat can also cause your processor to throttle. At this point, it's almost always less effort to just reload the entire operating system. But first, back up your data. Be sure you have the app distribution in case you need to reinstall the app. Presenting Marty Winston. If it sounds too good to be true, it must be, well.
PC Magazine once paid me $25 for a joke. It was in the form of a riddle. How can you tell when a computer salesman is lying? Answer: his lips are moving. Years later, I was attending a company's press conference at a major trade show. There was a pretty good crowd of reporters in the room, but the pitch wasn't making any sense to me. I asked the one question that they couldn't answer, and the whole thing fell apart, and that ended the event. On the way out, a younger journalist asked me how I knew what question to ask. I told him that there are two ways to answer him. The same rules apply to marketing as apply to a reporter's decision about whether something is worth covering. You have to answer two deceptively short questions. One is, who cares? There should be a very specific who in response, a description of people with a specific need that is well met by the new product or service, in a sense, a usage case. The other question is, why bother? Whatever problem or challenge the product is intended to address, there is already some solution in place, even if that solution is ignoring it. What is there about the existing solutions that make them unsatisfactory? And why should anybody bother to replace whatever it is they're doing now with this new whatever? Who cares? And why bother? But there's also a second way to answer him, and that's to explain that public relations people are almost always lying. Mostly, it's not on purpose. Their client or the company contact's boss or somebody in charge has told them specific statements about what's being announced. Statements that aren't exactly on the nose true for every user every time. And I explained that I have slightly more respect for the PR people who are deliberately lying, who know they are lying, than for those who simply don't bother to do their homework, don't ask for explanations, or in any way challenge what they're told. If you ask them, they'll tell you that that's not their job. No, that isn't fake news, not unless it reaches a reporter who responds with just as little skepticism. Skepticism, by the way, is taught in journalism school, and it's one of the hallmark differences between bloggers or podcasters or citizen journalists and the legitimate working press. But all of that is history and theory and philosophy, and I'd like to bring it home with some real-world examples of what happens when information is either left out or, with a little sleight of hand, not exactly left out, but not exactly added in either. In that regard, let's look at a water and energy story that's coming out of Procter & Gamble on behalf of Cascade dishwasher pellets. They start by comparing the water that a dishwasher uses to the water that people use hand washing dishes. You're about to hear those specifics from Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr. By the way, since P&G is not a charity, I suspect that these celebrities were paid for their performance. Here they are.
Energy Star certified dishwashers use less than 4 gallons of water per cycle. Washing your dishes by hand uses about 4 gallons of water every 2 minutes.
Even a load with only 8 dishes is all it takes to save water with Cascade Platinum versus hand washing.
Okay, I'm willing to accept that Energy Star dishwashers use less than 4 gallons per cycle, and if washing a single dish by hand does use half a gallon and take 15 seconds, well, that seems reasonable. Then washing 8 dishes does take about 2 minutes and use the same 4 gallons. Sarah's numbers seem okay. Freddie is a little off. If the dishwasher load is only 8 dishes, it doesn't save water. It's at break even. Until you add the utensils. Well, we'll forgive him. But there's something about this that they did mention, but you're not considering. Think about it for a minute while I throw in a couple of other statistics. Energy Star says that when a family of 4 has 2 meals a day at home, running the dishwasher instead of hand washing can save 75% in water and energy costs. Water? Sure. Energy? Maybe not if it's a dishwasher with a heat-assisted dry cycle. And focus here on the word instead, meaning you totally skip the hand washing and put the dishes directly into the dishwasher without cleaning them off first. But think about it. What is it that they're really trying to talk you into doing? Their theme isn't about only running the dishwasher and never hand washing. Their theme is about doing it every day. At our house, we only run the dishwasher when if we don't, we won't have any clean dishes for our next meal. And that's not every day. And what's the difference between running it every day versus 2 or 3 times a week? Obviously, running it every day means using several times as much water and energy, and something else that you almost overlooked. It means using a lot more Cascade. At least double or triple as much as we use on our current schedule. That factor was always there. But until I just mentioned it, had it escaped your attention? That's not deception, just misdirection. It's a mainstay of both magicians and marketers. Let's get to something a little more technical. T-Mobile finally sent, I asked months ago, they said they were sending it then. They finally sent their 30-day test drive that provides a Wi-Fi hotspot that gets its WAN connection from their new 600 megahertz service. That service is very significant for a lot of rural and exurban locations because it is their only reliable way to connect. Hey, even if you had a modem or a DSL interface, traditional copper wire phone service is not being extended, and existing lines are getting retired as quickly as possible to eliminate the cost of maintaining them. And those analog POTS old-school phone services can't compete on price with IP or even cellular service. IP and cellular are mostly not happening either. Rural population densities make homes out there economically unattractive to connect to cable or fiber. Available lines may be at least several miles away and often much more distant. And before this 600 megahertz service from T-Mobile, your cell phone got no bars at all in these areas. So the T-Mobile 600 megahertz service is very significant. As rural populations age, more doctoring happens over IP connections, and telehealth can't work if the web can't connect. So, in that example, it literally makes a life and death difference. I'm sure you can work out other significant applications for yourself. But T-Mobile isn't quite as transparent as they pretend to be. They brag about having no bandwidth limits, and they don't have the same onerous hard limits as some other carriers, but If you start using what they deem to be more than your share of data during the month, you get placed in a lower priority for whatever bandwidth is available, generally meaning you slow way down. It's the mobile carrier's version of an airline assigning you to a center seat in the tail end of the plane. Well, I mentioned that comparison to a T-Mobile spokesperson, and he thought it would be metaphorically a little more accurate from his perspective to explain it as an all-you-can-eat buffet where you may have a slightly longer wait in line when you go up for thirds and other people are there ahead of you. But here's the piece that feels more like betrayal to me. When I got their hotspot device, I'm just outside Cleveland, and T-Mobile towers are visible from my location. I ran some speed tests. They showed bursts as high as 25 to 30 megabits per second, but their end results were in the 2.5 to 5, really 4 megabit per second range. That's slightly faster than a DSL line. It's slightly faster than satellite internet. It's 20 to 40 times slower than the cheapest, lowest bandwidth internet service you can buy from Spectrum. The little brochure that comes with their device says you can use it for streaming video. Let me qualify that. It means you can watch HD at 15 frames per second, 1/4 to 1/2 of how you'd want to watch it. You can watch standard definition video at 30 frames per second. You don't have the bandwidth for anything better. With a 20 gigabyte monthly data allowance before things slowed down, most of their lines it's 50 gig to be fair. Well, with 20 gig you could watch one standard definition movie per day for just short of 3 weeks out of the month. You'll be happier with an antenna feeding your TV set. I checked with T-Mobile Advanced Tech Support, and here's what I learned. Get ready for a ride through Crazy Town. It's impossible for the hotspot hardware to single out the new 600 megahertz signal. It also looks for available 4G or 4G LTE connections. T-Mobile Tech says they expect to see 2 to 12 megabit speeds on 4G, 4 to 40 megabit per second speeds on 4G LTE, and they said that my address would get faster data rates outdoors than it does inside. Well, it's doggone cold here, but I did brave it for a few minutes and got outdoor data rates in the 15 to 30 megabit range. If they can get that through a wooden wall, I'll be impressed. But inside, it's still at 2.5 to 3 megabits most of the time. I'm doing a special report on this in my News Tips Bulletin, and I sent some of my notes to the T-Mobile group address for press people. So suddenly, after months of no response from them, I got a very responsive response from their guy in Chicago. He's the guy who mentioned the all-you-can-eat buffet. I dug pretty deep and got some new information that can help explain a little of this. While they're well along in their 600 megahertz rollout, it still has a long way to go. And their hotspot here connected to their higher frequency 700 megahertz 4G service, which explains why the walls gave it such a hard time. At the end of the day, there is no easy way to forecast what anyone should expect from them. In conclusion, the new 600 megahertz T-Mobile service is still iffy, and what you get will depend on too many factors to trust anything short of on-site trial and error. So my very strong recommendation is to look up their test drive program. They send you one of these hotspots that you can use for 30 days or 30 gigabytes, whichever comes first. There's no cost and no commitment. Get one, try it, see what kind of speed you get where you are. And use that as the basis for deciding whether to sign up for their service. If you do sign up, there are some discounts available for seniors or for veterans. They don't stack, it's one or the other, but they do have those available. There are a lot of acres in America where it will be the only way to get internet service anytime soon, which can be extremely important, but only if it works. So make your first step the trial and error of that no cost, no commitment test drive offer. Next time, I feel so unanchored. Next time I may get around to that LED fixture coverage. I've got some work to do on that first. Or I may talk about how artificial intelligence is helping improve weather forecasts. Or maybe I'll do a leap year report. Whatever I decide, do you dare miss it? Of course not.
Thank you, Marty. The 45th Trenton Computer Festival, Saturday, March the 21st. The College of New Jersey, Ewing, New Jersey. The original Personal Computer Festival is from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The keynote speaker will be Jerry Foster, CTO and co-founder of Plex Systems. The topic of presentation is How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Artificial Intelligence. It's an overview of artificial intelligence from its humble beginnings to disruptive force with an eye towards a significant positive impact on our world. And there are other feature tech talks and workshops, which includes do-it-yourself home automation, tricks and tips for Windows 10, quantum computing, WordPress bootcamp, new Internet of Things using 5G, stock market trading using neural networks, hands-on Arduino workshop for beginners, all-day robotics pavilion, and many more. For more information, tcf-nj.org. That's the 45th Trenton Computer Festival, Saturday, March the 21st of this year. Public service announcements. Computer club meetings in the New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut tri-state region. The computer clubs have random access sessions at each of these club meetings. If you have any questions or need for technical advice, the club members are more than happy to assist. All these computer club meetings that we announce are open and free to the public. The Long Island Macintosh Users Group will have a presentation on Mac OS Catalina. Friday, February the 21st. Meeting time is 7 p.m. at the New York Institute of Technology, Old Westbury campus, located on Northern Boulevard and Valentine's Lane, and they meet in the auditorium of the Harry J. Scher Hall. The Princeton PC Users Group meets Tuesday, February the 25th. Meeting time is 7 p.m., and they meet at the Mercer County Library in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. Brookdale Computer Users Group has a presentation on Why Switch Your Old PC, running Windows 7 to Linux. Thursday, February the 27th. Meeting time is 6:45 p.m., and they meet in the Middletown Library Lodge Meeting Room, located at 55 New Monmouth Road in Middletown, New Jersey. Computer Learning Center at Ewing has a presentation on Cutting the Cord, the Future of TV, Tuesday, March the 3rd. Meeting time is 1:30 p.m., and they meet at 999 Lower Ferry Road in Ewing, New Jersey. The Amateur Computer Group of New Jersey has a meeting on Friday, March the 6th. Meeting time is 8 p.m., and they meet at the Scotch Plains Rescue Squad in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. The Westchester PC Users Group will have a presentation on Hidden Gems, Thursday, March the 5th. Meeting time is 7 p.m., and they meet at the Keller Williams New York Realty, located at 120 Bloomingdale Road in White Plains, New York. Kings Bite Computer Club meets Tuesday, March the 10th. Meeting time is 7 p.m., and they meet at the Park Plaza Restaurant, located at 220 Cadman Plaza West in Brooklyn, New York. The New York Amateur Computer Club has a meeting on Thursday, March the 12th. Meeting time is 7 p.m., and they meet at NYU, located at 32 Waverly Place, the Silver Building, Manhattan, New York. Our website is pcradioshow.org. We are heard each Wednesday at 6 p.m. on prn.fm, streaming on the internet. Podcasts of the program is available on prn.fm, on the internet, as well as pcradioshow.org. If you have any questions for us, just send us an email addressed to hank@pcradioshow.org. In the meantime, stay in touch and remember to do regular backups. I'm Hank Key, and on behalf of Joe King, Michael Horowitz, Marty Winston, Benjamin Rockwell, and Mark Leoso, we thank you for listening. Stay safe and healthy till we meet again, same time, same station next week.